During their Christmas break, a group of sorority girls are stalked by a stranger. It's Black Christmas. Welcome, class, to the start of the Ghoul School holiday season, where every week up till Christmas we'll be covering a new festive Fright Fest. And if you think it odd that ghouls and demons are taking part in the holiday fun, well, I'll have you know that a certain Saint Nicholas once attended this very institution. Now, was it against his will? Who's to say? The details get a little fuzzy back then. Speaking of, Vice Dean Krampus will, of course, be indisposed all through this month. So, please give a warm welcome to your very merry substitutes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another period at the Ghoul School. I am the first of three hosts, Brian, Santa's little helper, Stork.
And I am Noel Vanoy.
That was beautiful.
And I'm Caroline Chris Kringle Knight.
Hey. Nolan, what are we doing?
That's him, audience. That's Santa.
Yeah, it's me, guys.
He's here.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Kringus.
He's a little underwhelming.
Yeah, a little bit.
Shut up.
Nolan, what are we doing this week?
So this week we are going to watch what is one of my actual favorite horror movies, and not an ironic sense at all, like legitimately one of my favorite horror movies. It's called Black Christmas. It came out in 1974. It was directed by a guy named Bob Clark, who also would later direct A Christmas Story.
Really?
Fun fact, which is crazy, especially when you watch this movie.
What a career turn.
Yeah, no, huge career turn. And you also, we'll talk about it after we watch the movie, but you can see evidence of his ability to work with comedy in this movie. This movie's horrifying.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did he direct it? Did he direct this movie before or after Christmas Story?
Before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that almost makes more sense than making a Christmas Story and then going to make a really scary movie about Christmas.
Well, that, if that happened, the question would be like, what happened in your life, Bob? Like,
He just started really hating Christmas.
Turns out
Christmas
this whole thing sucks, actually.
Yeah, so I don't want to give a log line or anything because I want y'all to have to guess what it's about. But in our last episode, when we talked about Michael Myers, we talked about the slasher genre in general. And Norman
Episode
Bates,
before last, you blocked New Mutants out of your memory.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I did block New Mutants out of my memory. We talked about Michael Myers, and we talked about how that was kind of the creation of the teenage blockbuster slasher genre. And from Psycho came Halloween. And I think there is a proto-movie in between that is somehow the mixture of Halloween and Psycho, and that is Black Christmas. And so that's what this movie is. I'm excited to watch an actually, like, a genuinely really good movie.
And I remember you mentioning that this is like the kind of origin of holiday-based horror movies in general.
Yes, I believe so. Actually, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe at one point John Carpenter was attached to make this movie.
Really?
But there were some disagreements in terms about what he wanted to do with it.
Interesting.
There are some big stark differences in this than what you would see in something like Halloween. But there's a lot of similarities, and there's things that this made some stuff.
Caroline, what do you think it's about?
All right, so here's my pitch. Y'all heard of a good old white Christmas?
Of course.
Where the snow comes down and it's December 25th and you're like, oh my god, we have a white Christmas. This time, the snow is dark. And they're like, why is the snow black? And they're like, oh no. And then it's really just a global warming PSA because it's all coal ash and they all die.
I was going to say, are they in Kentucky or West Virginia?
Sure, yeah. This is set in a coal mining town.
And so instead of like your typical like hot teens getting murdered or dying, it's actually just older white men
Yeah.
It's older white men.
And their
And they're-
families, because
everyone
the
thinks they're
collage
getting-
is everywhere.
Right, but they're thinking they're getting murdered, but it's just terrible black lung.
And then they have to tell everybody, look, if we don't switch over to renewable energy,
Right.
the scariest thing of all.
What? Who's that coming to town? Do you hear the sleigh bells ringing? It's Al Gore. Al Gore. to teach you about black lung.
An inconvenient black Christmas. Okay, Brian, any
No,
thoughts?
I can't beat that. It's Al
that
Gore
was-
coming
that
to
was pretty
town.
damn
What are you
good.
talking
That's
about?
what the movie's about.
That's what.
Come on.
Yeah, they nailed it. So it's fine. It's good.
So the actual log line is, as winter break begins, a group of sorority sisters, including Jess and the often inebriated Barb, begin to receive anonymous lascivious phone calls. Initially, Barb eggs the caller on, but stops when he responds threateningly. Soon, Barb's friend Claire goes missing from the sorority house, and a local adolescent girl is murdered, leading the girls to suspect the serial killer is on the loose, but no one realizes just how near the culprit is.
Cool.
But is the serial killer Al Gore? Because if it's not, it'll make me really sad.
They're gonna pull
kind
the
of-
mask off at the end of the episode. At the end of the movie.
It's like
Al
Scooby-Doo,
Gore.
and they're like, oh, old man Al Gore,
Yeah.
you won the 2000 election but had it stolen from you.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for the Electoral College.
Oh, wow.
Wow, classic Al.
I believe this movie was a big box office hit. So the budget was $620,000 and it made $4.1 million. I don't know what
Damn.
inflation would look like, but I'm pretty sure that's a pretty good.
That's
margin,
that's
so,
pre-inflation.
tasty
That's
with
crazy.
yeah.
All
Well,
right.
all right.
I'm excited to see Al Gore.
let's all hang out with Al Gore.
I hope it's not too Al Gory.
Ooh, man. Actually, the podcast is over. Take us away, Spooky Dark Spell.
Disclaimer, if you're wanting to watch Black Christmas 1974, it's a great movie and we will be spoiling it heavily, so I recommend you watch before proceeding.
Yeah, you can tell it's a good movie because we're actually warning you.
Yeah.
The tonal whiplash
And we're back!
that I have experienced going from New Fucking Mutants to this movie.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, guys,
You
I'll
cannot
spoil.
see me right now, but I am smiling so hard.
Yeah.
I will spoil one thing for you right off the bat. Al Gore is nowhere to be found.
Al
Well,
Gore is nowhere
we
to be
don't
found.
know that for sure.
Actually, yeah. We'll get there, but there's a possibility that he's
Yeah,
in this movie.
let's get into this. Let's get into
The
this
odds
thing.
are low, but never zero.
So we start off and we see a house all decked out for Christmas. It's a sorority house. And then we get this POV shot of somebody approaching and the music gets all spooky. And I immediately was like, POV shots usually don't do it for me. I will let you know that eventually it is very effective if you're gonna watch this movie. Because
There's like a switch that happens, and it like.
Because the beginning parts, I was like, how am I supposed to be scared of this guy if I'm like seeing his every move? And am I supposed to be in his shoes? I don't understand. And then there's points down the line that it's actually used in a really effective way to get you to be scared of it, and I don't like it.
Here's why I feel like it doesn't work at the very beginning, and then it does. Is because you're starting out the movie in his perspective, but the movie itself actually isn't in his perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you have switched to the characters that you are supposed to be afraid for, and then you cut to a POV, that's when you get that, oh shit, don't, like look behind you. That's when
Yeah.
you get that feeling.
Right.
Because like we're introduced to this POV before we see a single main character of this movie.
Right.
So he's in the window, and then he climbs up the side, and then he's in the attic, and we're like, oh no. And then there's a party. We're downstairs at a Christmas party, and Barb's really drunk. And
Margot Kidder. I did not realize.
Lois
Yeah.
Lane
Yeah,
herself.
that Margot Kidder was going to be in this.
She's great. I love her in this movie. Brian may have some differing opinions, but
Oh
I
no,
love
she's
her.
great. She's great. I went through
You came
phases
around.
We'll get
of
there,
how
we'll
I
get
felt
there.
about her. Yeah.
There's a phone call, and it's Claire's dad. And he's like, I'm gonna pick you up tomorrow. She's like, yeah, I know.
Claire is one of the sorority girls.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ones that we know
Yeah.
Yeah.
are Claire, who has to leave tomorrow. There's Jess, who's our main character. There's Barb,
Who's
who
Lois
is
Lane?
drunk,
Drunk and funny. And then there's, I think it's, is
Phyllis.
it Phyllis or yeah, Phyllis, yeah.
who has curly hair and glasses.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them, we don't know their names, and they don't
Right,
matter.
And they don't matter.
Barb shouts out that the party's over. All the guys have to leave because it's a sorority house. Get dunked. The spooky man climbs down the ladder from the attic and is now in the upstairs area. And this is the point where I said, hey, I don't want to watch this.
This is the point when I confronted the true horror of doing this podcast and being chained to this desk, is that there will be times where I have to watch movies that actually do scare me. And this is the first time that's happened.
And the thing is that the one genre I do not do are home invasion horror movies, and I don't watch them because I watched one once and I didn't sleep for 3 days.
What was it?
It's called Hush. It's like about a deaf girl.
Oh, I know
I've seen
Hush.
Hush
Yeah.
is kind of good. I
It's
kind
a-
of like Hush.
It's a pretty good movie, but I don't. The thought of somebody being in my house.
This is
Yeah.
significantly more scary than Hush.
Yeah.
my house.
That's where I live.
That's where I
my
live.
place. Nobody's
And,
supposed
like-
to be in there.
Pull back the curtain a little bit. We're all at our separate places, and I'm at my parents' house at the moment, and I hear noises in the attic all the time because there's squirrels, and now I'm gonna be scared of the squirrels. I'm not gonna sleep.
I'm sorry. Well, if you know, and maybe this is a window into the fact that there must be something deeply wrong with me.
Yeah.
I first
Well, you're
saw.
also not a female.
That's true. I first saw this during the COVID lockdown section, like back in March. And I watched it multiple times because I was like, wait, this is so good. And I watched it multiple times by myself with no friends during the middle
It's
of
a
the lockdown
fantastic movie.
at night. But I'm just saying that it clearly, there's something wrong
Yeah,
with me
that's a-
because I
that's-
can watch this over and
That's
over
what
again.
a murderer does.
Yeah,
Those
apparently.
are
I
the
would
actions of a
definitely-
murderer.
If I ever had to watch this again, I would need somebody with me, or else I might burst into tears.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
So they all get a phone call after everybody leaves. All the girls are listening, and it's like this guy, and he's like grunting and making weird slurping noises and laughing.
Saying really gross sexual stuff.
Yeah, and like they're all kind of like, haha, whatever. And then he starts saying like grosser and grosser sexual stuff towards them. And Barb, since she's drunk, is like talking back to him and like antagonizing him.
Provoking him, yeah.
And being like, I would never have sex with you. You're such a creep. And he's like being creepy, in like this crazy voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just stops and goes, I'm going to kill you.
And then he logs
And
off
then hangs
Xbox
up the
Live.
Like,
Killer
that,
has left the chat.
that moment made me want to throw up.
Yeah, it
No,
was
I mean,
good.
it's like such a great tone setter for the movie in terms of this like kind of almost avant-garde level of disturbing,
Yeah.
and then suddenly just like a snap to zero. I'm gonna kill you. Ugh, like ugh.
Like,
Yeah.
he's in this crazy manic high-pitched voice for most of it, and then he just like says it like a completely normal person in the most chill tone ever. I'm going to kill you. And I was like, I'm out.
The phone calls are cool because like they're all recorded ahead of time, and a lot of times there's actually like it sounds like there's multiple voices going at the same time.
Right.
And I think part of the disturbance of listening to these calls is you're almost like, how the hell is one human making all of these sounds?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, I don't like it. Anyway. Claire and Barb like get into a little spat, and Claire's like, well, I'm gonna go pack. And they're like, Claire, no, like, it's okay. And she's like, no, I actually do have to pack. I have to go see my dad tomorrow. So she goes to her room by herself. There's a big fluffy cat who I love. His name
He's
is
very
Claude.
His name is Claude.
He's the real
Now,
hero of this
the
movie.
captions of the film spell it Claude, correct?
Clearly a typo.
but
Clearly
it
a
should
typo.
be
we believe.
Clawwd.
Hell
that's
yeah,
the
it
correct
should be.
spelling.
Claude.
Claude.
He's wonderful. He's the fluffiest cat I've ever seen in my life, and I wanted to hug him very badly, especially since I was so very scared. So she goes to her closet, and the man...
There's a man watching her from her
Yeah.
closet through this plastic
dress bag.
Dress bag, yeah.
And then he suffocates her with a dress bag, and I debate turning off the movie. And it's actually a great crosscut, this, because she's screaming, and it like cuts into them laughing downstairs so loud that you can't hear her upstairs.
Yeah.
And they've just invited the
The house
sorority
mother has come
Yeah.
home.
Oh, Christ.
She's wonderful.
I hate her so much.
I think she,
You do?
other than
I
Barb,
didn't like her at all.
Other than Barb, she's my favorite character.
No,
in the
she's my
movie.
favorite
Oh,
character
God.
too. Her name's Miss Mac something, but everybody just calls her Miss Mac.
Miss Mac.
She is the drunkest drunk.
But in such a funny, cartoony way.
Yes,
I think
she
that
is-
was my. There were parts where I liked her a lot, but she really got on my nerves for a lot of this movie.
She's like this bombastic, like clumsy character that's like this short, stout house mother that just drinks a lot and yells a lot and likes to cuss, and I
Yeah.
really like her.
And it's
I really do.
every time we see her, she's hiding booze
She's hiding
in a different
alcohol
place.
in a different place.
Yeah.
which
And it
is
happens
so
like
funny.
15 times.
Yeah, so she finds it in like the encyclopedia, and she's like, "I hid it in B for booze," and I'm like, "Of course you did, you wonderful, wonderful woman." We see the shadow of supposedly the killer's legs crossing the banister, and in his shadow we see that he's carrying Claire up into the attic. So,
Yeah, terrifying.
the girls are going to bed. The phone rings. It's for Jess. It's her boyfriend, and she's like, "I have to talk to you," and he's like, "Okay." Nothing really happens.
His name is Peter. His name's
Peter. Miss Mac brushes her teeth like a lunatic.
For real. She is scrub-a-dubba-dubbin.
I did like this bit because they do the classic like mirror thing because she's looking in the mirror.
This made me
and then
really upset.
She's got like there's like two mirrors that both slide in different directions.
Like
and
her
she like
medicine
slides
cabinet
one in.
slides both ways.
And she like slides one in and then slides it back out and then slides the other one in and then slides it back out and then like
each time you're
moves
like,
out
"Oh
of
my god, there's gonna be somebody
and
behind
then,
her,"
like,
and then she
moves
opens
over.
it.
Yeah, she opens it,
Which-
she closes it, she moves over, she pulls booze out of the toilet.
Out of the
Pulls
toilet.
it back down. She goes
That's
like,
my favorite hiding place that she has.
It's
it's
really
the best
funny.
one.
Booze in
It's
the toilet.
She's
I think
drinking toilet.
I think it's all
it's-
downhill from there with the booze jokes.
It makes me
Yeah.
it makes me wonder where it did the mirror trope I think had to have like come
It was
in
already
horror some-
established at
Yeah,
this
it
point
must
have.
because
Okay.
that I think it was done for a joke because
Okay.
the way that shot was framed, there's no way that that's not the joke.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jess knocks on Claire's door and is like, "Hey, Claire, you good?" And then cut to Claire in a rocking chair in the attic, still wrapped in the dress bag.
Now this was actually a point of confusion for me because I thought that cut meant that she was still in her room. So for a while I was like, why has they've filed an entire missing persons report and nobody's checked
Nobody's
her
found the
room?
body. Yeah, no, she's in the attic because
Yeah,
you see
yeah.
the guy take her up.
Yeah.
So that's upsetting. And then cut to a man just kind of standing outside, and I was very confused. This guy is just
chilling.
clueless, looking around, gets hit by a snowball. This guy comes.
Which honestly, like, fuck this guy, and I'm like, having seen it multiple times, whenever I see him get hit by a snowball, I'm like, yeah, fucking.
Wait, why fuck
I
him?
think he's a huge like. I think if we remove him from the plot of this movie, and we just imagine what he was like in Claire's life.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
beforehand,
yes.
I'm
So
like,
wait,
this
we
guy's a
haven't
fucking
said
prick.
who he is yet. This
Yes,
is
okay, so
Claire's
this is
dad.
Claire's dad. He's waiting for her. They were gonna meet at 1 p.m. That's what he had called about earlier, and she's not showing. So he gets hit in the face with a snowball. This guy comes up and is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm watching these kids and should have
Look at all these kids."
And then he's like, "Hey, I know this is kind of weird, but like, I'm looking for my daughter. She was supposed to be here and she wasn't. Her name's Claire, and she's in this sorority." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know where that is." And he points him in the direction of said sorority. Cut to the fraternity house, and Santa's just cussing like a sailor around these kids.
Which is funny.
Yeah, and this is one of their friends who's just...
Yeah, so one of their friends that was at the party before is just saying like, "Ho, ho, ho, fuck." And I'm like, there are children around,
I love that
sir.
cut.
I love the constant swearing around children. And this
Yeah, like he has a child, like a 7-year-old in his lap, and he's like, "Ho, ho, ho, shit."
Yeah.
Ho, 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 shit.
And they're all drinking, and it's an interesting atmosphere. I didn't really clock what actually happened in that scene besides
Yeah,
that.
what are those kids doing there? Is this an
Yeah,
event?
yeah, no, I don't know.
This is when Barb is like also like feeding that kid alcohol in
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
background.
and that's a little bit later, right? But Barb is literally feeding a kid like alcohol.
Like a 6-year-old. Claire's dad goes to her sorority house where he meets Miss Mac and is quote unquote disappointed in the atmosphere of Claire's room. Because it includes some naked photos on the wall. Not of her. So he's walking around her room and sees like pictures of boys and like rock and roll records, and he's like, "I don't appreciate the atmosphere of this room." And
That
Miss
Miss
Mac was
Mac
like, "She's
has
really
this-
a good girl." Like,
Yeah.
And Miss Mac has this like beautiful way of covering for Claire.
Oh my God,
There's
yeah.
this poster of 2 naked people laying on each other in the peace sign, and she puts her hand over top
yeah,
of their
she's like
ass.
leaning her hand
Even
against
though-
the wall and like covering the naked people, and then like when she has
Yeah.
to move her hand, she like puts the door in front of her hand before she takes it down.
Even
It's very
though
funny.
he would have seen it when he was talking to her earlier.
It's fine.
It didn't work for me.
It just
I don't
makes,
like.
It's
I don't.
just to make her more of a cartoon character.
Yeah, see, that's what I
she,
didn't like.
I love
realizes that it's there, and she like looks, and then she's like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, that's what I didn't like. I didn't like when they pushed her full into cartoon.
No, I
character.
loved it. It's perfect, and you're wrong. So they realize that Claire's stuff is like all packed and ready to go, and nobody's seen her. So they're like, "Oh, she might be at like the fraternity house. A couple of the sorority girls are over there. Let's go over there." And then Miss Mac has some wonderful interactions trying to find a cat, and then
Yeah.
cussing in front of Claire's dad, and it's funny until they get in the car. And as they get in the car, we pan out, and then we see Claire in the attic, her dead body, as they get in the car. And I was like, "Oh, this isn't fun." Oh, I was having fun, and now I'm not.
Yeah.
As our killer is also still in the attic, and he's
Yeah.
he's
Laughing
chanting
and making
a
weird
lullaby.
grumbling noises. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it. Jess is hanging out with her boyfriend, and she's like, "I'm pregnant." And he's like, "Wonderful. We're gonna keep the baby. I'm so excited to be a dad and you to be a mom and us to be a big old happy family." And she's like, "I want an abortion." And he's like, "You can't do that." And she's like, "I'm pretty sure I can." And he's like, "You can't do that."
Yeah, I mean, she's like, I wasn't even gonna tell you. Like,
Yeah. He really sucks, like a lot.
you really,
Yeah.
he really comes right out the gate with the misogyny. He's like, how are you? You're gonna make this decision and not even consult me about it? Like,
It's like, bro, yes.
Well, it wasn't even consult. It was ask me.
Yeah.
Like for
yeah,
permission.
ask me if
Yeah.
you could do that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and he was basically like, "You're not, and there's no way that you're gonna do it because I'm a man and I tell you what to do." So that's not fun. The dad is at the fraternity house calling the mom while Barb is feeding a 6-year-old alcohol right next to him. And then Jess gets home and she gets another scary phone call.
And there's a little bit of a meta narrative here that's going on within these
there's
phone
like
calls.
Billy and Agnes, and I don't know who they are.
And so, well, it's not anything that you really would be able to decipher super well from the movie, but Billy and Agnes are brother and sister, and there is some. If you pay attention to each call, is like a story of who they are. and why they matter sort of starts
Interesting.
to fill out. Yeah.
So our killer is doing all these different voices of like, there's a child, there's Billy, there's Agnes, and there's like a mother. And they scream and fight and stuff, and it just makes me so uncomfortable. Barb, Phyllis, and Mr. Harrison go to the police station. They're like, we want to file a missing persons report. And the police are very largely unhelpful. They just don't, they could not give a shit.
Well, it's one primary dumbass.
It is
who?
Nash.
What's his name?
Nash. Yeah.
Nash sucks.
But he's not all that, like, he doesn't have that much of an effect on the story overall.
Yeah, but he
though.
sucks.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He does
Idiot.
suck. John Saxon's character, however, though, is like I would say,
Is that the lieutenant?
yeah,
Yeah, I liked him a lot. But
pretty effective. But
Yeah.
Nash is a bumbling fool. And then he asked for the sorority house's number. And who would like to give me that number?
it's fellatio.
Yes. It's Fellatio 00226.
Yeah.
And the
Now
police
here-
front desk man
Was
falls
like, oh,
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's a new. What's the? It's a
It's
new
a new exchange.
Yeah, it's
A new exchange.
So good.
I will. Okay, that in a vacuum is really funny. But this is kind of the moment where I was like, I don't like this woman because your friend is missing. Stop
Okay,
dicking
shut
around.
up. She's drunk the whole time.
Yeah, she's literally
Yeah.
never not drunk. She also is
Yeah.
the kind of person I feel like she alludes to when that first phone call comes in. She's like, I get 2 of these a day in the city. This guy's nothing
Yeah.
in comparison. And so
Yeah.
I feel like she's just on the level where she's like, oh, Claire's gonna show up. It'll be fine. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was what was unlikable to me about my favorite actor, Margot Kidder.
Then we're at a hockey game, which was one of the most jarring cuts in the movie to me. Because suddenly we're just in a close-up on a painted hockey mask, and I'm like, where am I? What is happening? The only thing I had was the captions that said, hockey pucks clacking. And I was like, yes, that.
Indeed.
That sweet sound that wakes me up every morning. Jess goes to see Claire's boyfriend, Chris, who is playing hockey, and she's like, have you seen Claire? She's been missing. We're looking for her. The police have been largely unhelpful, and he gets really upset. He's like, they should be looking for her.
and he's also like, I thought she was already gone. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, wasn't expecting to see her again. So
Right.
Jess's boyfriend is playing just the worst piano piece ever and sweating so much. He's sweating so much. It makes
and
me uncomfortable.
he's clearly playing poorly because the guys that are there to like judge his not a recital, I guess, but his audition or something are like
like a test
this
or
guy.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're like, bro, what the fuck?
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much silent except for just him banging around on a piano for like a solid minute and a half, and we're just like, alright, this guy's crazy. So, we cut back to the police station. There's a woman describing that her daughter is missing to a lieutenant, and he's like, oh yeah, we'll get a look on for that. The missing girl's name is Janice. And then Claire's boyfriend comes in mad angry and just starts shouting.
Yeah.
Specifically at Nash. He's like, you bastard, Nash.
Where in real life, I feel like if you walked into a police station, like speaking to these men as they probably deserve to be spoken to in this circumstance, you'd get thrown out like immediately.
Yeah. Or shot.
He's like, Nash, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, like you just run into the police station screaming, like you're gonna get shot.
Well, I guess he gets a pass there because all the other cops agree with him.
Yeah, they're like, Nash, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, Nash is a fucking idiot.
Yeah, he is an idiot.
And the lieutenant's like, oh yeah, that's shady shit. Like, we will file a missing persons report, Nash, you dumb fuck. Like, why
It took
didn't
a white man coming inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, truly. Mr. Harrison is having dinner at the sorority house, and Barb is just the drunkest you could ever be.
This is peak Barb drunk.
Yeah,
peak-
she's talking
peak
about turtle sex. She's talking about zebra sex.
She's talking about how turtles, when this certain type of turtle has sex for, they can do it 3 days straight, and then she's like, I'm lucky if I can get it for 3 minutes.
Yeah, she also says that she watched it at the zoo, but not for the
Yeah.
whole 3 days, which I thought was pretty
It's
funny.
really
It's
funny.
really funny. But she's saying all of this to Mr. Harrison, who has a missing child.
Yeah, which is less funny.
Who has a missing child and should be named Buzz Killington. Like,
yeah,
his child is missing.
Deeply well, like, even if it wasn't he is not the type of guy to say that type of shit to, because he was offended by a picture of a boy in his daughter's room.
True.
So then everybody's like, Barb, you need to go to bed. Like, this is a lot. And then she starts, like, genuinely freaking out. And she's like, you guys all think this is my fault because I was, like, yelling at Claire the night before. And, like, if she ends up dead, you're all going to think it's because of me.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty real.
What do you think I am? The kind of person who gives beer to 7-year-olds?
Smash cut to Jess's boyfriend post critiques, I guess, just smashing his piano.
Yeah, he is just wrecking the piano.
Honestly,
like,
this is like one of the
piano.
more disturbing scenes of the movie to me.
Yeah.
Because of the idea of taking a mic stand to a grand piano is like
Beautiful grand piano, too.
it was a Steinway. Yeah, it was a really nice piano.
And, like, he just whacks the shit out of this thing. It is upsetting. So after he throws a child's tantrum, pretty much, Jess and Chris go to the sorority house, and they pick up Mr. Harrison and Phyllis to be like, we need to go look for Claire. Yeah. And there's a search party, and they're looking for Claire, and they're looking for the other girl that's gone missing, Janice.
Who's like a high school student. Yeah.
Yes, she's younger. Ugh, no, I don't like this next part. So Miss Mac is packing. She's singing, having a grand old time.
She is having a good time.
And then she hears Claude, the cat, meowing from the attic. And
meaning
she goes,
someone took Claude up there.
Yeah, and then she goes around and she's like trying to find Claude. She's like, Claude, where the fuck are you, you little prick? Actual line, she said.
Ideal.
And she walks towards the attic, and she opens the attic, and she's looking around, and she's like, Claude, we're gonna have you fixed. And then there's, like, hands holding a hook for, like, moving shit on a pulley, like, behind her, but she don't see it.
Convenient pulley. Was that a thing in the 70s?
I don't know.
Yeah, like, I don't have a house.
If you're moving furniture into that attic, like, you would have a... Yeah. Like, industrial pulley like that to get it up
Every house needs a good meat hook. That's the first thing you learn.
I mean, it's literally a meat hook on a pulley, which
because
is terrifying.
if you're gonna have a slasher movie at your house, which everyone wants, I mean, that's of
course,
that's a big property value driver. You gotta get a hookup. You gotta get a hook. You gotta get a hookup.
The hookup. I hate you.
Who has the hookup?
Well, it turns out that it's Miss Mac, and it's in her face.
Yeah.
So she turns around.
Miss Mac has the hookup.
She sees Claude, and she's like, Claude, and then she sees Claire, and she's like, oh my god, and then she gets hit in the face with a meat hook, and then feasibly hoisted out.
Yeah, hoisted up with said hook.
Yeah, and is very much not dead when she gets hoisted up, which is the worst part.
She's like screaming. And
what's great though is like there's no impact shot, and I think it actually is much more frightening because there's no impact.
It's a lot scarier because there's not an impact shot. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was waiting for a bad
Goofy, campy
dummy swap.
Whoa! Then we get the scariest POV shot ever, and this is when I texted the group chat and I was like, guys, the POVs work now. Because he's like running around the attic and like knocking shit over, and then he's like rocking Claire with his hand and like singing at her, and it's just a bad time, and he's like punching.
Well, it's a parallel to something else. It's a parallel to Peter demolishing his piano with the mic stand. And it's our killer is in the attic just destroying everything in the attic.
Yeah. He's throwing a tantrum. Just a lot of people throwing tantrums. Back to the search. No progress is made, and Jess has to split off. That's all we get out of that. We see Claire and Miss Mac in the attic. They're both dead, and I'm uncomfortable. We see back to the search party, and they find something, and they're like, it's Janice, presumably dead, and the mother comes up of the child, and she screams into the phone ringing in the sorority house, which is a really great cut. But
Yeah. Yep.
Jess answers the phone. The person's crying and saying, help me, you have to help me. And then starts yelling about Billy and Agnes again.
Yeah.
She calls for Miss Mac, who obviously doesn't answer because she's dead. She starts making a phone call, and we pan to the steps, and I'm like, oh no, someone's walking down the steps. What the fuck? She's gonna get moited. She's our main character, and it's just her boyfriend. I was very upset by this.
This is something to note here. Played by Keir Dullea, who was Dave in 2001.
That's what I knew him from.
Yeah, this man is 32 years old playing a college or grad student in this
Which
movie.
makes his creepy feel even creepier.
I wonder if that was intentional, honestly.
Yeah,
because,
it could have been.
Because Olivia Hussey, who plays Jess, was only 23 when they made this. So, yeah, there's clearly like a difference between the two of them. And I think part of it is age.
And he kind of looks like Johnny Alucard. So there's that.
Not Johnny.
Our patron saint.
Our patron saint of perverts.
Yeah.
I said perverts.
Perverts. What a perverted way to say perverts. Is that fuck?
Honestly, if Johnny Alucard was aware that he was a pervert, he would call himself a pervert.
I think that
That's
every
true.
time. I think every time we flub a word on this podcast, we should curse Johnny Alucard, patron saint of perversion and flubs.
So Jess and her boyfriend are standing in the living room. Jess is like, hey, a girl got moited, and it sucks. Moited. And she's like, now I'm worried about Claire. And he's like, Claire's probably fine. And then he's like, I'm going to leave the conservatory. And then I want to get married. And this is where I'm like, girl, you need to file a restraining order against this man.
Yeah.
I just wonder, because he's so shitty, how did this relationship start?
I know.
Yeah,
I was like, what are they like outside of this conflict? Because he seems like he just sucks.
Yeah, he's so blatantly and openly awful and like sociopathic and controlling. I don't know how this relationship could possibly even start.
It was the 70s.
That's true.
That is also true.
Yeah, so meat hooks in the roof. Yeah, sociopaths in the bed. That's how it was back then.
You know, classic.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm leaving the conservatory and then we're going to get married. And she's like, dude, you have dreams that involve staying here and so do I. And I still have shit that I want to do. And like, I don't want to put that on hold. And he's like, you can still do it. And she just says, I don't want to marry you.
Yeah.
Which is like, the hard line was like way back, but that was another hard line that he should have recognized.
Yes.
Yeah,
she's
and,
like, I don't want to marry you. Cut back to police station where the lieutenant is getting a report about the phone calls that have been going to the sorority house, and he sort of connects the dots that somehow the disappearance of Claire and the phone calls might be related, and they need to really like kick it into high gear and figure out what's going on. And then there's this whole bit where he sees the note that Nash had wrote about the sorority house's number because he's like trying to call them, and sees that it just says fellatio. And then a bunch of random numbers, and then they all make fun of him for a really long time.
It's wonderful.
It's really
for like a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Like, it's a long scene of them just making fun of how stupid Nash is. Cut back to Jess and her boyfriend. He's losing his shit. He's like, I can't believe you would, like, do this to me. What kind of woman are you? You're gonna murder our baby, you baby murderer.
And she's like, I'm a normal 23-year-old.
She's like, I don't want to have this child, and that's my right to say that I don't want to have this child, and I also don't want to marry you, and if that's a deal breaker, that's okay.
Yeah.
And he storms out as the lieutenant enters. So they're tapping the phone, checking out the house. They've got a guy outside sitting at watch. And then while we see the guy outside, we also see Peter is just like lurking by a tree, and this is when I was like, oh my god, he's the murderer, because every time we've seen a shadow by a tree, it's been the murderer.
Yeah. And this is when I was like, it had better not be him.
Yes, I also didn't want it to be
him.
him.
I hope they're setting him up as like a red herring kind of deal, because it would be really dumb if it was him.
The movie takes you right up to the brink of trying to tell you one thing, and then
it's
tells
true.
you something
I
totally
thought
different.
that this was going to be like a week link in the movie that like it's so clearly not him and they're pushing it, but they
lead
got
you really well into these things, and in a way that I felt like was satisfying as the audience to be like,
Yeah.
I'm being brought up to this conclusion. I don't think you're making this conclusion. Oh, now I'm convinced. And the second you convince me is when you flip it,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I enjoyed. Phyllis freaked out and, she's like, I'm going to go to bed. It's done.
Yeah.
And then they get told that the phones have been tapped. So the one in the living room and in the hallway are tapped, but not the one in the house mother's room, which has a different phone number. We get a really scary point of view shot again where, like, Claire's got a baby doll in her lap and he's, like, singing and rocking her back and forth, and I really don't like it.
Did he bring these
Yes.
props from home?
I
or were
don't
they just
know.
there? I don't like
It
it.
made me upset.
I had like, there's things in that attic where I'm like, why does a sorority have a house?
Exactly.
Have an
But-
ancient rocking horse.
And a bird cage.
I know the answer to that question.
Oh. Okay.
What?
Wink.
I feel like we're gonna get a whole secret narrative in this movie from
Yeah,
Nolan at
what
the end
the
of
fuck?
this.
You are.
I'm excited about it.
So, Jess is just chilling downstairs by the phone and hears a noise as the man is coming out of the attic. He's feasibly going into Barb's room, and we see that he's, like, standing over Barb, and then, like, we cut down to the living room, and Jess hears her, like, screaming and wheezing and stuff, and runs up there, and she's, like, having an asthma attack, so she, like, helps her stop having an asthma attack. And then Barb was like, I must have had a nightmare. I dreamt there was a stranger in my room.
And this is where Barb flipped for Brian.
Yeah, this is I don't know what exactly it was, but
The fact that she
asthma
has
attack.
asthma?
Yeah, the asthma attack. I was just like, oh, I like her again.
Was
Damn.
it relatable for you,
Because I know she's about to die. Which is, I think, something this movie is very good at, is making you actually like somebody who you were, like, on the fence or indifferent about right before they kill them.
Yeah. Because she's, like, very visibly in pain, upset, having this asthma attack. And then Jess leaves her, which is just the worst idea.
Well, she leaves her.
Well, the
She
best
leaves
idea
her-
for her own safety.
Because there's carolers downstairs, and she goes and she listens to the carolers while Barb is being stabbed to death by this man.
Can
Let's
we
talk about the
briefly
social
talk about the
contract of
social
caroling.
contract of caroling?
Yes.
Because just
very
the
important.
idea of, like, these people knocking on your door, and if you open it, then you have to stand there and listen to them sing at you and only you, making direct eye contact for 8 minutes.
And
Yeah.
what makes this scene of caroling specifically interesting is Jess opens the curtains of the window because she hears them outside. She opens
Yeah.
the curtains of the window, sees them, and then decides to go open the door.
Yeah, that's
now,
what I don't get.
If I saw carolers at my door through the window, I would immediately shut my curtains and then go hide in the bathroom for 3 hours until they're for sure gone.
Yeah.
The greatest injustice that a child can commit is caroling at you
It's
for
caroling.
8 minutes.
If
Yeah.
you open the door and you're listening to the music, what are you supposed to do?
You smile and nod along, and then you politely applaud at the end of the song.
Right, like, are you? It's so not
Are you supposed
interactive.
to,
Like, are you
bob
supposed
your
to?
head? Like, are you
You
supposed,
supposed to sing with them? Like,
Yeah, you
okay,
join in.
if you have, now look, like, if you have been caroled at before,
Yeah.
Please email
send us an
us.
email. Please send us an email and let us know how it made you feel.
We will read it on the
Yeah.
podcast because I have to know what it's like.
Yeah.
So there's carolers at the door, and Barb's being murdered, and Jess is being, socially
Also
murdered. Yeah, so then suddenly one of the ladies who's, like, with the kids that are caroling, I guess it's, like, a school group, is like, you guys have to go, because she finds out that the girl Janice was found dead.
Yeah.
And she tells Jess, she's like, dude, this girl died. And she's like, yeah, I know, it's super sad. And while they're outside, the phone starts ringing. She goes inside, and she answers the phone. And it's a creepy call. But they're tracing the call through this giant warehouse of machinery.
I didn't know this was how tracing calls worked
Yeah.
in the olden
Yeah.
days.
Tracing
But just
calls
a
in the
man,
70s was a nightmare.
a man sprinting through a giant room full of, like, phone lines.
It's honestly-
like,
it's so
rows upon
difficult.
rows of phone lines, and trying to listen for the one that it is, and, like, see the, like,
Insane.
movement of the mechanics. It's
It's so difficult it was so difficult that they probably should have just said, "Look, we can't do it. Like, it's just not something we can do."
Oh God.
Then the killer says a line about at the very end of his call before he hangs up. He says it's just like having a wart removed, which is something that Peter said to Jess about her wanting an abortion. He's like, you're treating it like you just want to get a wart removed. So this is when the movie's making you think like, oh fuck, like it might actually be Peter, like for real, because
But also the killer's been in the house, so he could have been listening.
Yes.
Killer in the house.
But Jess doesn't know that, so
house.
she's like, there's no way that anyone but Peter would know that would bother me.
Right.
They couldn't trace it because the call was too short and the scary guy hung up.
And it takes at least 3 hours on the phone to trace a call.
You have to keep them on the line for about 2.5 days.
Yeah. Phyllis comes downstairs. She's like, I can't sleep. And she's going with Jess. And Jess is talking about how now she thinks it's Peter. So they sit down in the living room and they're waiting by the phone to see if there's another call that's going to come in or if the police station is going to call them. They get a phone call and it's Peter. And he's crying. And he's like, just don't kill the baby. Just don't kill the baby. Like, you can't hurt my baby. This is my baby, too. I know you want this. I know you want to be with me. Don't kill the baby.
Yeah.
Ugh, gosh.
And the lieutenant is listening to it and is like, bro, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So right after this phone call, the lieutenant calls Jess and is like, you mind explaining what the fuck that was about? And she's like, well, so, like, I told him that I wanted to get an abortion, and he's really upset about it. And he's like, can you give me where to contact this man? Because he sounds like he's...
He sounds like he's Super the murderer.
They realize, though, because he's asking her questions about Peter, and they realize that it's not Peter making the phone calls because he was in the house while Jess had one of the phone calls, and he was not on the phone. This is when the search party guy stopped by.
This is the most chaotic scene, I think, in cinema history.
Do you guys want to explain what happens?
So
Jess and Phyllis they're chilling in the house, chilling in the house.
Chilling in the house, and I'm in the house bored.
They hear a knock on the window, and they're like, oh my gosh, what is it? And they, like, go over to the door, and it's these two, like, country-esque, like, search party boys, and they got a shotgun, and then they just rapid fire Aaron Sorkin dialogue back at each other for
wild.
like 2 minutes.
Also, the way that they come in, like, they just pop in through the window and freak the fuck out of the girl.
Yeah.
And then they open the door, and then they're like, oh, we didn't mean to scare you. And he's holding a gun.
He's holding a gun. He's literally pointing a gun at them.
He's like, we're with the search party. It's like, okay, but, like, stop.
Yeah.
Well,
We're for just making sure you feel safe.
And then when Phyllis, like, closes the door, she has this line that I actually think is really funny, and she's like, I would have rather faced the killer. And I'm like, yeah me too.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah.
Oh, but then there was also the thing of, like, lock all the doors and windows.
So they're like, just to make sure that you're safe tonight, lock all the doors and windows. And this is precisely the moment that I texted the group chat and said, oh my god, she's gonna lock herself into the house, and then she's not gonna be able to escape the killer. That's gonna be the whole thing. And she's like, do you realize this is the only door that we keep locked?
Yeah.
And
It's like, what
this
the
is
fuck?
when I was like, of course you have a murderer in your house.
You have like a million windows in this place.
Your house
And
is
there's also
so big
been-
and has so many places that you can't see.
Yeah.
And then on multiple occasions throughout earlier parts of the film, like, the front door has been left open.
Yeah, the door's just
They're
open
like-
for
yeah.
most of this movie. So Phyllis and Jess just make the great idea to split up to lock all the doors and windows. Because why wouldn't just split up to do that?
Yeah.
Phyllis is going to check on Barb, knocks on her door, opens the door, and then the door shuts behind her, and we're like, oh, yeah, she's dead.
Yep.
The lieutenant has checked the recital hall where Jess said that Paul would probably be because that's where he goes when he's upset and sees that the piano is just smashed. Mm-hmm. Jess is, like, calling for Phyllis. She's like, wait, bro, where'd you go? And then the phone rings. It's Creepy Boy. They trace him.
Guys running between all the phones.
Yeah, he's
Sprinting.
sprinting. Like, this guy's the real hero. They realize that the calls are coming from inside the house. Is a thing that obviously saw coming because he's in the house, but like still worked for me of like the realization of these things that you're hearing are coming from inside your own house is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trope for a reason. It hits.
It's scary. And then the lieutenant's like, oh god, we have to like get her out of there. Calls Nash and is like, Nash, I swear to god, if you fuck this up, I'm gonna be so mad at you. He's like, you have to tell her to just calmly put the phone down and walk straight out the front door. Do not ask any questions. Do not go anywhere else in the house. Just leave.
Yeah.
And then he calls the guy who's standing watch outside, who is dead.
Right.
And he did not pick up the phone. And then they drive off and they're like, we're going to get there in time. This is when my notes turn to a lot of, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Do y'all think Nash was going to get this easy little task done properly?
I had very little faith in him, but he did do his best.
Yeah, he didn't
and honestly,
do a bad
like,
job.
I actually understand, like, because she's being like, why? I don't want to. Why?
Yeah.
You know?
Like, my
Which is also
immediate assumption was gonna be that when she said that Phyllis and Barb were still in the house, he was gonna tell her to go get them.
Yeah,
Right.
that was what I
doesn't.
was worried about.
He's
Yeah,
like,
does not
do
that.
not get them. Go straight out of the house. Do not look back. Like, put the phone down and leave. And she's like, no, but Phyllis and Barb are still in the house. And he's like, absolutely do not just leave. And
Right.
she drops the phone. She's like backing up towards the front door and you think she's gonna fucking leave. And she's screaming for Phyllis and Barb. And then she has a mental breakdown, picks up a fire poker and decides to go after the murderer.
Yeah,
Right.
which is just, like, the dumbest way you could even approach that. Because, like, now not only she's screaming for them, so the killer now
She's
knows
alerted,
that she
know where she
absolutely
is.
knows that
Yes.
he's in the house,
Yeah.
and then goes back in to go and fight him, I guess.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this
With
is
a-
like
with a-
one
with
of
a
the
fire
scariest
poker.
sequences in this movie. It actually genuinely made me want to shrivel out of my skin.
Yeah.
So she's going up the stairs, and the whole time, literally all of my notes just say, you absolute fool, just leave the house, you asshole, I hate you.
Seriously, there is such an easy solution to save your life here.
Yeah.
So she, like, busts in the door and sees that both Barb and Phyllis are murdered in Barb's bed, and this next shot, like, even if you don't watch the movie, you should Google it, just be like,
Yeah,
Black
we're gonna have to put
Christmas
this in the video.
1974 eyeball shot, because it's like the killer's eye through the crack in the door, and it's framed and lit in such a way that was just so upsetting.
It's
And-
so dehumanized, like it's so detached from like a human body.
Oh,
It's,
and
like,
he just looks so
just an eyeball.
crazed, and it's very scary. But important to note, he has brown eyes.
He has brown eyes.
Yeah. And also the fact that it's, like, not a jump scare.
No, it's
I
not.
think
And you have
that's
to look at it
scarier.
for a prolonged period of time, which made me upset.
Yeah, he's just there. And he's just looking at you, and now what? It's like, oh, fuck.
It makes me really upset. I'm actually
Yeah.
currently having a bad time thinking.
Well,
about
I
it
do
'cause it's dark in
like
my
that her
house.
response is to just slam the door into him.
Yes,
which
so
is pretty good.
Which
she
is the
just-
correct response.
She just
Yeah.
throws the door into him. He goes like, "Oh fuck!" And she's like sprinting out of the house, and he's chasing her, and she can't get out because she locked the front door too hard.
She locked it from the outside,
She locked
I
it
guess.
from the outside,
Like,
I guess, and it's hard to get out of. So then she has to run into the basement, and he's like banging on the door, scratching at the door, and then he just stops,
Yeah.
and you hear him walk away. and
It's
close a
almost
different door.
funny. Like, where he's just like banging,
No,
like, oh,
that's
and
not
then,
funny to me.
And then it
never
just,
mind. Like,
and then it just stops, and he just goes, dum 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 dum.
That was literally. It didn't read funny to me at all. It was one of the scariest parts to me because I was like, "Oh fuck!" Like this guy's crazy.
Yeah,
Like-
it's definitely good.
So now she's in the basement and she's looking around and she has fire poker in her hand ready to stab,
Poke.
I guess. There's a door that leads outside, but she thinks that somebody might be outside because she hears footsteps.
So there's a figure walking around outside, and there's like those small windows that you'd have at the top of a basement wall if it's just enough above ground to see. And so
Yeah.
there's feet walking around, and then someone crouches down, and there's a silhouette of a hand, and it's Peter, and Peter's trying to get into the basement because he figures Jess is down there. Yeah.
Yeah, so then Peter comes to, like, the actual door, wipes off some of the frost, and is like, Jess, are you in there? And she, I guess, didn't get a good look at what the murderer's face looked like because she slammed him with the door.
Yeah, she hasn't seen what the murderer
So
looks
she
like.
still thinks it's Peter.
Yeah.
And is, like, hiding from him. He busts in the window and starts, like, coming towards her, and she's, like, hiding, and Peter's like, are you alright, Jess? It's me. And he sounds really creepy this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. While I did not think that Peter was the murderer in this moment, I did think him very capable of murder.
Yeah, he's, like, super creepy the whole time. It's very upsetting. So Peter's stalking around trying to find Jess, and we see that, like, the police are speeding down the road, and she's hiding from Peter, and we're like, are they gonna make it there in time? Because you're not really sure if Peter's you're pretty sure Peter's not the murderer, but he sure is acting like a murderer in this scene.
Yeah. You're not sure if it's going to be a thing where she thinks he's the murderer and fucks it up, or he, like, goes, oh, are you okay? And then you think, oh, it's fine, and then he kills her.
Yeah.
Like, it's either way.
Cut to outside of the house, the police are there, sirens are wailing, you hear her screaming, like, bloody murder. They go and find her in the basement, and Jess is unconscious behind Peter's dead body because she killed him.
She fucking busted his
Fire
skull with that
poked
fire
him.
And
poker.
this shot does a really great job of highlighting his
The fact
bright
that his
green
bright
eyes.
green
Yes.
eyes,
They're like, this man has green eyes and you fucked up.
Yeah.
It's interesting hearing you guys talk about it, and I wonder how much influence I might have had on y'all's perception of what was happening based on us texting each other. Because most people that review this movie or, like, make a video essay about this movie basically say that you don't realize that the killer is somebody else until after this scene. And I wonder if me being like,
No,
Don't
because
worry,
I
this
got
movie
the,
isn't
I got
over.
the eyes thing. Because when we got the shot of the killer's eye, I said, Peter has green eyes. We've seen it before.
Yeah,
Like
and
it-
I was pretty positive the whole time that it wasn't him. And, like, once he was killed off screen, I was like, oh, it's definitely not him.
yeah.
So they put Jess under. They're trying to, like, make sure she's okay. She's heavily sedated. The police are in and out of the house. It's crazy. They find out that Mr. Harrison, Claire's dad, has, like, gone into shock. They have to take him to the hospital. And in all this commotion, they leave her alone to rest.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're certain that Peter was the killer.
Then we hear laughing down the hall and
In
up
a
the stairs.
Fucking fantastic shot that just
Yeah.
so slowly travels from her room,
to
down
Barb's
the hall.
room, to Claire's
Yes.
room, up the attic, and you
Yeah.
just hear him laughing and murmuring and singing. We see from the outside of the house, Claire and Miss Mac still in the attic, because they haven't searched the house yet. There is, I saw in the captions, police chatter in the background that says, we must search the basement and the attic.
Which they, for some reason, haven't
Some
done
haven't. They should have done
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
literally.
Like, while they were there,
when
you
Mr.
know?
Harrison's dad arrived. Like,
yet. Yeah.
And as you pan out, we see the outside of the house, and we see, like, a policeman smoking a cigarette, like, out on the front porch, and the phone rings from inside. And
And
he
the phone
looks
ring
at
gets-
it, and he doesn't answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The phone ring just slowly gets louder
gets
and
louder
louder,
Louder and
as
louder
the
over
credits
these
roll.
credits, and it's so upsetting.
good.
Yeah. It's a great button. The fact that they don't reveal who the killer actually is in the moment, I gave me the
Frustrated me.
"oh, go fuck yourself" reaction.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I get that it doesn't matter who it is, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
And
a
maybe there's
couple
a-
things frustrated me about this movie.
Yeah.
One was the Bill and Agnes thing that we never really got, like, clarity on what the fuck he was talking
Yeah.
about. But I'm sure, like, people have
But I don't
dug
want to
into
have
the
to do
lore of this movie.
Yeah, I don't want to
online.
have to do homework to understand what a
Yeah,
movie
exactly.
is saying.
I don't know if it, I mean, the thing is I don't.
And I don't care if it's not important to the thing. I just wanted to know the answer while I was watching the movie because it kept being repeated, and the fact that I
Yeah.
didn't have the answer by the end frustrated me.
It was framed. There were ways in which it was framed like a mystery that just doesn't have a payoff,
Yes.
and that was annoying.
And
to
also,
me.
like, seeing the face of the killer never kind of made me sad. Because, like, even if it was a stranger and the reveal was just, like, some random face, I wanted to see his whole face. I wanted to see his whole face across from Claire in the window when we see her in that last shot, and that would have
I
made
do
me
respect
satisfied.
it. I do respect it just being the eye, because the fact that the eye of this dude ranks somewhere in the middle of probably our monster rankings from 2 weeks ago is pretty good.
For me personally, I don't like necessarily feel any need to be, and I know it's not a character in the movie. Like, the killer is not a character in the movie.
No.
Beyond just
He's
being
a
the killer,
voice.
and so it doesn't really bother me that much.
Well, I think that's also hindsight.
I think also because
that's
they've done
hindsight
such
somewhat,
a
but,
deal to hide his face that it made me feel his face was important.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I felt that on the first time I saw it or not. But to give you what the whole Billy Agnes thing is,
Right.
And also it explains why there's like random shit in the attic and all that. So the meta narrative that Bob Clark never really told me one about until years later was, so Billy was a family lived in the house before it was a sorority house.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother of the family was super abusive, and they had 2 children that were Billy and Agnes. And the killer is Billy. And Billy, they were abused by their mother, and also Billy and Agnes had like an incestuous sexual relationship.
That's why he keeps saying, like, they know what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And Billy would continuously get like sent up to the attic and punished in the attic whenever something along those lines happened with Agnes. And so the killer is Billy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I don't know how I necessarily, maybe I just am coming at it from a more surface level enjoyment of the film. Like, it doesn't necessarily bother me that I don't get an answer to the mystery of it or anything. But
yeah, but my thing is that, like, I like the cliffhanger of, you know, the killer's in the house, and you know that she's in the house by herself essentially, and like she's in danger. I liked that. But I feel like not having all loose ends tied up in that scenario is what made even that ending frustrating to me.
yeah.
But to step out of that for a second, like, overall,
It's a great
like,
movie.
what was the budget of this movie?
It's like $620,000, I think, is what it said.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's really, really smart filmmaking, and it's so well paced, and just like, it's brilliantly put together.
I misspoke earlier in our intro talking about John Carpenter. So John Carpenter was not involved to make this movie at any point in time, but he did have a meeting with Bob Clark around 76, 77 when he was sort of gearing up to do Halloween, and before Halloween was really a thing. He had a conversation. He was going to do a sequel to Black Christmas, and so he's having a conversation about, like, well, Bob, what were your ideas for a sequel to Black Christmas? And so Bob said, I'm not into horror movies anymore. I'm not going to really do that.
I just made a Christmas story. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm thinking I'll do a Christmas movie that's a sci-fi fantasy adventure.
And so Bob eventually kind of relented and was like, well, here's what I was going to do. The killer Billy was going to get apprehended and put into a mental asylum. And Billy was going to escape and go on a kill rampage
Michael Myers-esque.
around Halloween.
It is Michael Myers-esque because it is Michael Myers.
Yeah.
I love the concept that both Billy and Michael Myers are Al Gore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really strong.
So since we don't know who the killer is, it's probably Al Gore.
Billy and Michael Myers?
God damn you.
I've never been more frustrated with you, Nolan Monoy. I am so angry. So, I think this movie is a good movie. It's not a bad movie. I will not be watching it again.
I think we've unlocked a secret new rating, which is it's just a good movie.
It's just a good
It's just a
movie.
good of the good. I think this was probably a very sober episode because it's hard to make fun of a movie when it's genuinely disturbing and scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and drunk out of 5 is probably a 0 barbs out of 5.
If I ever
would say.
watched it
0
again, I
barbs
would
out of
want to
5.
be drunk, though.
Yeah, that's true. Any rewatch.
I think here's the thing. I think it's two different experiences. I think you could watch this drunk and you'd have a great time.
It would be like
but
a
it would
fun
be
roller
a different
coaster.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can watch it sober and it'd be a great time in the way of like, oh gosh,
Scary.
that was really scary. Yeah. So best of the best, I guess.
Yeah, this is
Best of the
best of the
best.
best,
Yeah.
baby.
A solid start to our Christmas season.
Christmas.
Happy
our holiday
holidays,
adventures.
y'all.
Happy
Are we gonna
holidays.
watch a
Happy
scary
holidays, one and
Hanukkah
all.
movie?
We probably should.
Yeah, if we can.
Well, we have
Find
one of our other Christmas movies, holiday movies scheduled. We could do a Hanukkah movie.
We could.
Send us your Hanukkah movie horror movie recommendations.
Oh, please
in
do.
our email.
We'll put out an Instagram question thing for people to respond to.
Yeah.
All right, and you can follow us on Instagram at Ghoul School Pod. All of our links are there, and if you
Check
could
out-
give us a rate on iTunes and Spotify, or follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our
Yeah,
channel.
check out the YouTube channel. We do video versions
Brian
of every podcast.
actually puts
Brian
in
works really
edits.
hard. Brian works really hard to do these, and they're really worth watching.
They have
Thank
a
you.
visual component that is enhancing the wonder.
Enhances the experience.
Thank you so much. Johnny Alucard has a Christmas hat and a Santa beard. Thank
Happy
you so much, everybody,
holidays.
for listening. Happy holidays. We will see you next week.
And ho 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 fuck.
Ho ho fuck.
ho 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 fuck.
Nothing warms my heart like a holiday murder spree. Be sure to return next Friday for more Christmas spirits.